Philosophically speaking, this Western idea is also prevalent throughout the Meiji period. There was a very bright intellectual named Fukuzawa Yukichi. He arrives on the scene in the Meiji period. He has an interesting story because he was sent to the United States to study for a number of years, as any intellectual in the Meiji period. And he became very, very fluent in English. He could write and speak. And eventually he publishes 7 books in Japanese. One of them was called The Condition of the West, and it sold 150,000 copies in Japan. Fukuzawa basically talks about the West and why their people and how advanced, why they were so advanced compared to the Japanese, how their countries got so advanced, and what Japan needs to do to be like them. So, of course, this book, The Condition of the West, really spreads because people want to find out how to be like the Western powers. Got very, very popular. By the way, Fukuzawa is on the 10,000 yen bill in Japan. So if you wonder who that was, that's Fukuzawa Yukichi. His most famous work, however, is An Encouragement of Learning, which sold 3.5 million copies in Japan. And it basically tells you that if you're a Meiji period Japanese person and you want your life to be better, you want to improve your lot in life, you can. How do you do it? By getting an education. So this concept, which was rather foreign to the Japanese until now, because according to Neo-Confucianism, you were born in your social class and you had to accept it no matter what. This was foreign to them, but this gives you a way out. By education, you can do whatever you want. And thanks to Fukuzawa, universities are founded in Japan for the first time. In fact, Fukuzawa himself founded Keio University in Tokyo. At this time, we also have Waseda University that's founded. Tokyo Imperial University is founded and still just as it is today. Back then, it was considered the top university in Japan, just like it is now. And if you wanted to guarantee success and advance in this new Meiji period society, you wanted to become a government official or whatever, you had to go to university. And Fukuzawa was very, very supportive of the government's decision to make public schooling free and accessible for all, because he felt that, unless the Japanese people, everybody, including the farmers, every part of society was educated, you'll never be able to catch up to the West. And so he encourages the Japanese to get an education and get a job. And he said, if you want to beat the West at their own game, you got to do these things. You got to get educated. You got to get a job. And they said that he believed that Japan still had a long way to go before they were caught up to the West. He said, he said we have an unfair footing because they're ahead of the game. But if we catch up, we might be able to beat them at their own game. So while all these reforms are taking place, let's go back to Saigo Takamori. He, if you might remember, he's one of the Satsuma samurai who helped overthrow the Tokugawa regime. He becomes dissatisfied with the new Meiji government. He said, these reforms are taking place too fast. Okay, we're getting rid of the Japanese culture and bringing in all these Western things. Is it a good idea? And he didn't like how the samurai class was basically being treated. He felt that they were being treated like trash. They were being ignored. He didn't like it. After all, he was a samurai himself. And one incident basically is the final straw for him. In 1873, the new government, the Meiji regime, wants to open diplomatic relations with Korea. Okay, and Korea was ruled by, at that time, an anti-Japanese faction at court, who still remembered the issues of the 7-year War of Hideyoshi, and they refused to open diplomatic relations with Japan. So the Japanese government says, whatever, let's let it go. We don't need to worry about them. We have bigger fish to fry. Saigo says no. Saigo says they've got, attacked us. They've attacked our honor. They've insulted us. We need to invade Korea and punish them for what they did. And the majority of the government said, forget your samurai things. We're in a new we can't just go to war like the old days. Let it go. So Saigo gets mad and says, I'm leaving then. I'm not going to be part of your regime anymore. So he refuses to cooperate with the government because he felt that he was against what they stood for. So he goes to Satsuma in 1877. He retreats with his army, which was made up of other samurai who were also disillusioned with the new government. And he says, we're going to rebel against the new government. Okay, we don't like the way it's going. I don't like what's happening. We're going to rebel. What were they saying what were they suggesting that they would establish? We don't really know. What Saigo was planning to do if he suddenly came to power. Was he going to become shogun? What was he going to do? We don't know what he was planning, but he was a bit of a hothead, so he just felt that he didn't like what was going on. He wanted to rebel against the government, and so he did, without really any plan. So the Meiji government testing its new big imperial army attacks, and it's basically these new conscript soldiers who have been drafted into the imperial army against ex-samurai who are older and a small, kind of raggedy group of people who are rebelling, and there's really no common cause. They're just upset at the new government and they don't really have any other suggestions. So of course the imperial army puts down Saigo's rebellion. Saigo himself commits seppuku, ritual suicide. And so he's considered to be the last samurai because he is the last samurai, to suggest that Japan return to this type of rule. That's who the movie with Tom Cruise was based on, Saigo Takamori. Although, very, very different people, obviously, and I don't think there was an American man in Saigo's army like the movie suggests with Tom Cruise. But it's based on this story of traditional forces trying to go against this new westernized regime. So after the Satsuma Rebellion, that's what it's called, the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, because it was in Satsuma. After this rebellion was put down, the Meiji government no longer faces any more domestic challenges to control Japan. Basically, the government is fully entrenched in westernizing the country with no opposition.